there's a point at which you are ready to purchase. Some people will just go ahead, some people need a nudge.
You're setting your prices sets the perceived value, and you're damaging that every time you offer a discount and you're training people to expect discounts. If we can just recover even quite a small percentage of people at checkout who don't buy, with the right promotion, test and optimize and get that working really, really well, that'll have a big impact on your bottom line.
People are a bit more discerning with their cash at the moment. We've got a lot of expenditure in people's daily budgets and weekly, monthly budgets. So for a luxury or a non-mandatory purchase of a handbag, it takes its toll.
You're constantly thinking, what should we be selling, to who, for how much? And then you're constantly testing these things. You're bringing things to market. You're seeing if people want to buy them. You're testing things all the time. Everything should always be a testing and optimizing process. Sell more things to more people more often. What is going to help you do that? Figure that out. Test it. If it works, keep doing it more. If it doesn't work, discard it. Stop doing it.
DTC Live On Air is powered by Bright Pill by Sage.
In today's episode, I'm joined by Dan, VP of Marketing at RevLifter, a platform that focuses on promotional optimization, and Max, Head of Ecom at Radley, a very popular British heritage accessories brand. We're going to be talking about what actually drives conversion today and how brands can grow without giving away that margin. Hi guys, thanks for joining me today. So for the listeners, can you both briefly introduce yourselves, your role, and how you both work together?
Sure. So I'm Max. I'm head of ecom at Radley, and I know Dan because we partnered together through their fantastic company to do targeted offers on our site.
Yes, and I'm Dan, and that's also how I know Max. So yeah, I work in marketing at RevLifter. So RevLifter do what we call intelligent offers, deals, promotions, discounts to help retailers improve conversions, AOV, all those things they want to improve, while avoiding damage to brand and margins.
Amazing. I have some great stats in front of me, so we're going to dive right in with them.
Let's do it.
But you've driven 15% conversion rate, 23% AOV, and reduced promotional costs by 8%. What actually sat behind those results?
It's the intelligent offers that Dan just spoke about, surprisingly.
Thanks, Max.
But no, it is as simple as that. So we got to a point where discounting was really quite prominent. I think it's prominent across the market anyway. But what we found was that actually just utilising sort of blanket discount codes meant that people were getting it when they would check out anyway. So what we've done to deliver those results is we've quite simply targeted a subset of customers who we think actually need a code to convert. And so as a result, we've driven better conversion with that group, increased the average order value, as you say. And then because we're not showing it to everyone, it means that we are able to kind of bring down the percent of people that are utilising the codes.
I guess it sounds like such a simple thing, but it's just overlooked sometimes as well. People on your website for a reason, there's intent there. They don't all need that push.
That's it. Yeah, and you're always, as a customer, you know that you are in different stages of your purchasing journey. So you might just be discovering the brand for the first time. The last thing you want to do is offer that person, or you don't need a code at that point because you're not ready to purchase. But there's a point at which you are ready to purchase. Some people will just go ahead. Some people need a nudge.
And when you look at performance today, what does good actually mean beyond just the conversion rate? I think a lot of people focus on that conversion rate, which is obviously so important. But how do you define that as good?
Yeah, I think the main thing for us is it's about revenue per user. I think when you take a step back, and conversion's great, but as we say, like customers, their buying intent changes. It could be seasonally, it could be just how they develop as a person, and where we've got changing demographics on site and targeting different audiences, a blanket conversion rate is not really the measure of success you want it to be anymore. We end up just looking at a few extra bits, so like revenue per user, and then it's the microtransactions through site. So listing page through to product page conversions, the product page to add to cart, etc., etc. So those funnel metrics are the bits that are important.
Yeah, it's definitely the wider picture, isn't it, rather than just that end result. And Dan, I guess you're working with a lot of brands outside of Max and the Radley team as well. But where do you see brands focusing on the wrong metrics or misreading that performance?
Yes, I mean, we do work with other brands, but Max is definitely our favourite, 100%. I just say that. I mean, he's only sat a couple of feet away from me, but it's important to say that. And that's really where the concept of intelligent offers, Max has talked about it really, really well. That's where that concept comes from is, promotions are a really powerful thing. Discounts are a really powerful lever that retailers have got. They're one of the biggest ones, right? You're reducing your prices in order to drive those improvements in conversion and AOV. And conversions AOV are really important. And what we're trying to do is make sure you get those improvements in conversion and AOV, but without the downsides that come with that, which is the damage to brand and margins over time. So margins obviously is the short-term thing, the quick thing. It's costing you money on every transaction. And in the longer term, though, it's worrying about the brand value. So, you're setting your prices sets the perceived value, and you're damaging that every time you offer a discount and you're training people to expect discounts. So it's looking deeper at those metrics. We spent quite a lot of time thinking about what are the right metrics that really demonstrate that you're doing that demonstrate that you're driving the more revenue that you want, but also you're not causing that damage. So we're looking at things like properly measuring incrementality, like are we actually driving more purchases, additional purchases, and not giving discounts away to people who have bought anyway. But also looking at things like budget saved, like how much less is it costing you to get these conversions that it would have done if you just shown that offer to everybody. We can work that out. We can run control group testing and make sure that we're actually driving those improvements you want. So it's just looking deeper into the metrics and saying, a classic one, if you wanted an example you could do without necessarily working with RevLifter, it's just looking and saying, if you're driving an increase in conversion rate, is that bringing down AOV, which often can happen, and you want to balance those things out. So it's always just looking a bit deeper than the first metric you get to. The metrics are a bit further away, and looking into those to make sure you're having the impact you want to have on the business.
And I guess different departments are going to care about different metrics as well. So what's important to the ecom team might not be as important to the general marketing team and stuff like that. So
that's it.
And when you were optimising Radley's site, what did you learn about how purchase intent actually shows up in behaviour?
I think that's probably more of a question for the RevLifter team, purely because I think that I'm going to say black box, but I think that's unfair to say. I think there's is it 28, 30-ish metrics that you guys use to...
Ooh.
Wow.
I was actually talking to our data science team the other day. It's over 50 we're now collecting. So it's an increasing all the time. We're always looking for testing what data points we can bring in, how much of a tell are they, how much do they tell you about what's going on, and then if they are valuable, you keep them in. If they're not, then it's about prioritising and things. So it's about looking. I like the black box thing. It's all magic. That's all you need to know. I mean, it's interesting because again, we have these conversations. Like there is an element of how much when you speak to a retailer that we're trying to work with. How much do they want to know? Because we could get really nerdy and go into really all the deep stuff about like how we're working all this stuff out, all the different models, how you put a model together, what it's working out, how it's weighting these things, or how much do you want to just say it's kind of magic? Don't worry, as long as it works, it's delivering the results you want. How deep do you want to go into it? So we have to be ready to cope with all those kind of things. But there are some interesting things. There's definitely some interesting things you discover. There's some really obvious stuff. Like, the further down the funnel someone is, obviously the more likely they are to buy. Someone who's come before is more likely to buy. But there are some interesting things you learn. One of the things I love about when you meet different retailers is you learn about all these different businesses and the different things that go on in them. We work with a brand who have quite a high AOV. They're a kayak retailer. So obviously, when it comes to selling kayaks, when you sell one kayak, you're not going to get someone to buy a second kayak. So it's cross-sells quite like, oh, I've got one kayak. I definitely want a second kayak. No, you only buy one kayak. But you might want other, you might want gloves, or you might want a paddle to go with that, or a life jacket. And so their thing is like, can we get increased AOV, but it's only with certain products and they're lower value, and how can you sort of increase the basket that way? So it's going into all those, going quite deep with individual retailers and going, where are your specific challenges based on how you work? What's your margin situation? How much have you used promotions before? All that kind of thing. And you can do, and being quite custom about the answer you then come up for to how we're gonna deploy offers in the right way to drive the impact you want.
And would you say when you're speaking to retailers, do they come to you and say, okay, well, we want to look at this, or do you guide them and suggest to them?
It's a bit of a mixture. So often someone will come and say that they have a specific challenge. Like normally they have a priority as Radley did when they came to us and said, we know we're over discounting and that's something we want to address. How can we do that? Someone might say, at the moment, our focus is on increasing conversions or increasing revenue or increasing AOV is a particular challenge for us, or the over discounting problem. There's lots of, some people come up with really specific things, like we have this very specific challenge. We've had people kind of say, well, people only buy one product and we want them to buy like a set of products. Is there a way we can do that? People buy, we had a gift retailer we work with who said, most people buy individual gift products, but we rather they bought experiences. So is there any way to incentivize them to switch? Turns out there isn't, by the way, because the two things are just too different. You can't quite, unless you offer a really massive promotion. But this is the thing. It's about all testing these things and seeing what you can do with them. But then at the same time, we've got a bunch of things where we've worked with retailers. We'll just say, the classic, the number one classic place to start is checkout exit, because that's such a common problem. And just say, like, if we can just recover even quite a small percentage of people at checkout who don't buy, with the right promotion, test and optimize and get that working really, really well, that'll have a big impact on your bottom line. So yeah, it can be a mixture of both things, trying to address existing problems, but say, we've also noticed these challenges in your data, let's try and fix some of those.
So what signals tell you a customer is ready to convert versus still in consideration?
It's definitely those behaviours. So it's the things like, adding to basket, except those kind of obvious actions that they take on site, going between product pages, back to listing page, back in again, committing searches, that kind of thing. The other things that we see are things like Control C. So people will actually grab our product code, copy it, and try to search somewhere else. Like
you can see that.
So you can do that as well. And so we actively target those people. To basically say, if you're performing that action, we can see that you're probably quite far down the purchase journey, and those sort of things. There's also just checkout abandonment, basket abandonment, etc. That they're really important to target. But it's interesting what you're saying. What we find with the testing, we've done lots of testing, and actually another thing that's really helpful is just the power of the different types of mechanics, because we're shifting from a percent to a dollar in our US market, because we find that's actually worked much better, where in the UK we find percent works better. So it's really quite interesting to see the individual territory variances and the behaviours, and being able to tailor it. It really helps.
Is that because just British people are better at maths? Is that what you're saying, Max? Are you saying Americans are no good at maths on this podcast?
I think my guess is that in America you have sales tax. So actually taking 10% off of price that actually you don't know what you're actually going to pay for in the end, because it's another 8%, 10%, whatever it might be. Yeah. Taking 10% off of 10% or adding 10% back on probably gets a bit, I would get confused with it. So a raw dollar off, where you say, right, here's our bag, it's $300. If you can take $20 off it, or whatever it might be. Yeah. It's rounder, it's easier. Yeah. Whereas in the UK, I think percent is probably just more frequently used in the market, and it's probably customers are, learned that actually, I'll take 20% off, or 50% off sales, and those sort of things. Yeah,
it's great, isn't it? That's something that's come out of the data, led to an insight. It's great.
Absolutely.
It's really useful.
I was going to ask on the different markets, actually. Is there, between like the US and UK, is there a specific market that likes a discount more, or?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, it's a really interesting one. So the US market, they are less interested in codes in general, we find. So that's across not only with RevLifter and what we do with them, but also in our affiliate programs and things like that. They're much more keyed into like cashback rewards and things through their credit cards and that kind of stuff. In the UK, certainly, it's, yes, we've got a swathe of people that love cashback sites, but codes are really quite prominent. And so we certainly see that. We also benefit, we're quite well known in the UK. I think 90% of people know who Radley is, or who Radley are, whichever one that is. And as a result, they've probably already got an understanding of what the brand looks like and what buying a Radley bag would be like for them. Whereas in the US, where we've got lower sort of market penetration and sort of customer awareness, it's naturally a little bit more hesitant in that sense anyway.
Yeah, I think like it's a British icon, isn't it, Radley? But you're further down that funnel in the UK, so
exactly.
Makes complete sense. And how would you say discount-seeking behaviour has evolved from when you first started to now?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, so when I was if you're talking e-com in general, it's a bit different, but so I've been at Radley for 5 years, and we were post-COVID. I think digital was the only way for a while, so it was actually quite, I'd say, easy. It was a bit more easy for the retailer, just purely because that was the only channel people could engage with. What we've certainly seen is it fluctuates, and it really is. Seasonally it will fluctuate. Macroeconomic climates really force a difference as well, but people are a bit more discerning with their cash at the moment. We've got a lot of, expenditure in people's daily budgets and weekly, monthly budgets. So for a luxury or a non-mandatory purchase of a handbag, it takes its toll. So yes, there is an increase in people seeking codes, but I think also there's a bit more to it than just people want more codes.
Why do so many brands still rely on blanket discounting even when it erodes that margin?
Well, yeah, we did a bunch of research on this, and it's because it works, right? Retailers know that. I think we did a piece of work with IMRG, and they went out to, they've got a big panel of retailers. They collected a load of data from them, and it was about 50% of all products, revenue, and transactions in a year came from discounted products. So, it's a tactic. They've been around for about 150 years. Discounts as part of the retail landscape. It's a really long time. It's a very old, established tactic. If you're not going to hit a sales target, you've got a bunch of stock to clear, the easiest thing to do is go, right, let's stick a discount on, demand goes up. It's basic. I've got to be careful I don't go too much into nerdy economics, but supply and demand, right? If you want to drive up demand because you've got too much supply, drop the price, generally demand goes up. So that's just what it's all about. So discounting's just always been incredibly popular. It's this really powerful lever though, because it's all about dropping the price and setting expectations with consumers. And I just think it's not always been possible to see a way to do it more intelligently, right? It's always been a case of, if you're going to do a discount, you're just going to have to put it out and everybody's going to see it. You can be selective. You can only apply it to certain products or whatever, but it's generally going to get out there. Usually they leak, especially on the internet. There's whole websites full of discount codes that have been leaked. So it's always just been the case that there isn't a way to do it more intelligently. And that's where the RevLifter concept came from. Like, is there a way we could collect the data on websites, whatever data we can get hold of, and use that as a way to say, well, who should get a discount and who shouldn't? And then what discount should people be getting in order to make them more likely to buy? And that way we can drive those conversion and AOV and revenue improvements whilst mitigating those downsides. And so that's what we're trying to do.
I think I'd also add there's probably certainly heritage companies where technologically they haven't got a brand new kind of setup. Things like, we have unique codes and we have for a while, but there's a number of retailers that just can't do that. So you kind of have to rely on a discount code, a blanket code, because you can't give each individual customer their own unique code.
And actually, I'd add, and this came out of me and Max did a little video of our case study, and we talked about this. And one of the things is just the time that e-commerce teams have as well, and the time to think about these things. Like, is it possible to do something different here? Like, e-com teams already have, emails to send out and a website to look after, and think about all the different teams, trading teams are coming to them, merchandising teams. There's a huge amount of things they've already got to optimize and think about. What's going on with advertising? What's going on social media? Content creators. What's happening with all that stuff? So what are you doing with promotions on top of that? And what we often find, because we work as a managed service, and part of the reason for that, originally we had the idea it was going to be a platform that people just log into and use themselves. But actually nobody has time for another thing to look at, another big load of data to analyze, and then a bunch of tactics to deploy. So giving the support there and saying, look, there is this other thing you can do, a different way of doing things. We can help you do that. Let's look into this. Let's work together on that. That's enabling retailers to have a look at this stuff. So just having the time and the awareness that you can do something different is always a challenge.
Efficiency and convenience is so important as well to a lot of e-com teams, and to have more time, it'd be great.
Yeah.
Do you think, and I would hope they do, but do you think that brands are actually thinking why they want to discount rather than just like, okay, we want to make more sales, let's discount? Or do you think they're actually, I guess it depends the size of the brand. Do you think they're thinking, okay, we've got this dead stock we need to get rid of, or we're releasing this, so we want to phase this out? Do you think that thought process is there, or do you think it sometimes comes down to a competitor's doing this, so we should do that?
I think it varies, but I would say, every business I've ever worked in, and I'm sure every business you work with, you have to churn your stock. And it's quite simple. When it comes to retail, you have to just sell through your stock. And if you are not doing it, what happens? Your stock gets sort of left and your cash gets locked up in stock, and no one wants that. So yeah, 100% people do look at it, and there's definitely a difference between a merchandising promotion and a marketing promotion. And I think what you'll tend to see is, there's a reason why we have sales every year and every half year or every quarter across the retail landscape, is purely because people do need to churn through their stock. You have seasonal buys, it needs to be sold. You can't sell, sandals in the dead of winter. Likewise, you're not going to sell, big boots in the middle of summer. So you naturally have to do that and get the most return for it. I think it's the bit on top of, there's the marketing codes, as I say, which then allows you to do something different. So if that's an acquisition driver, a retention driver, or something extra, that's when, you get into the codes and the stuff we do, because, you might want a customer to come back, they haven't shopped for a few months, or you might want to nudge a new set of customers over the line, or whatever it might be. So I think there is a hell of a lot of thought that goes into, why we discount. And yeah, sometimes there will be, I worked previously at a video game retailer, and so when Prime Day came along, you just had to do it. The same with Black Friday. There's, probably 80-90% of the market goes into Black Friday. There's a number of companies, and actually more and more each year are not. But yeah, there is certainly a seasonality thing, but there's a lot of thought, I think, that goes in on top.
I'm glad you just mentioned Black Friday before I did, because it feels illegal to be talking about it this early, although people should be. How does your strategy on discounting change from normal to then going into Black Friday, Cyber Monday?
I think our peak planning starts in May, something like that. Obviously, we do our annual budgets as well on top of that. But I think what we see is that customers are expecting percent or bigger discounts naturally off the product price. So that's naturally what happens. So where we see and what we do, so very much there'll be pockets of stock that we want to clear through during that period. We need to give customers a really good offer, otherwise it's disingenuous. And I think that's really important to say. But there's extra bits we can do on top. So it's about, we flip the discount mechanics. So it could be sign up and you get a bounce back. So you get, buy in November, and then you get a reward to spend in December or January or something like that. So you can really change it up. I think the other thing is that you might do extra on top, and just give people an extra little nudge. I think competing and getting a lot of noise is problematic. So we really try and reduce the how expansive our discount set is around Black Friday, and we're really quite targeted to say, actually, we've got the right product at the right price for this period, and then there might be additional levers that we pull on top if that's as I say, a bounce back or an extra bit.
Do you find that there's a bit of a lull in sales leading up to Black Friday because they're thinking, I'm going to get this discount, I'm going to wait?
There's certainly some of that. I don't know how much it is, but you can see in the data, I think IMRG shared around peak and things, is that you can see that certainly in the Black Friday just gone, there was an obvious shift to people waiting. People waited for Black Friday. The year before that wasn't as pronounced, so people were happy to buy in the week up to. What we really see is that, a couple of weeks before something like that, people really start engaging much more. There will be some things that offers go out, people don't want to miss out, so they buy early. Some people will wait until the day and see what the best offer is at that point. So it really varies. And
then a lot of brands say they're testing, but how much of it actually proves anything meaningful?
I mean, I'm gonna big up the RevLifter platform here, because it's fundamental to what we do.
Yeah.
So we have many campaigns running. Every single one of those campaigns has a control group, and then within those campaigns, we also will be doing A/B testing as well. So that could be around offer sensitivity. It could be about what kind of level of discount we're putting in. We might be tweaking the expected conversion rate, I guess, is the question. So what is it? It's the intent. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So we'll tweak things around that. And throughout everything that we do, and our wonderful account manager, every call we have, we're always looking at that in detail, and we're looking at, right, we've done this is what's happened. we haven't run it for long enough. We've run it for long enough. We're going to roll out, etc., etc. So it's the fundamental baseline of everything that we do. I think if you guys shifted your control method at the start of the year, and it's been fundamentally as a game changer. So previously, it was very much if someone landed on the site at that point, we would say you're in the control or you're eligible for discounts. And that was whether or not they had hit the triggers that we had determined on site to receive a discount. What has now changed is at the point at which they display the behaviours to trigger the discount, that's when they go into the control or the variant. And so as a result, we can see in far more detail like that customer, and essentially the impact of the campaign. So before it was very much that person would land, they could do anything, they could be really high intent. We should have shown them something, but we didn't because they were in the control group. Whereas now they're kind of in a slightly different, it's further down that funnel, and it makes a huge difference.
I always say, big shout out to Lauren, by the way, who is the person who works with Radley on a day-to-day basis at RevLifter. She's awesome. Like testing and optimizing, I always say, like, fundamentally running a retailer, but almost any business, is essentially a massive testing and optimization process. You're constantly thinking, what should we be selling, to who, for how much, and then you're constantly testing these things. You're bringing things to market, you're seeing if people want to buy them, you're testing things all the time. So yeah, everything should always be a testing and optimizing process. And when we work with a retailer, we're like, we don't know all the answers right now. What we're going to do is figure out all the answers with you. We've got a good idea of what we should do, but we're going to figure out, like any CRO process, we're going to figure out how your specific customers respond to what we put in front of them, your visitors, and we'll figure it out. And kind of the end game we almost want to get to is this idea of, for everybody who comes on your site, we can work out how likely they are to buy or not, what is the right promotion for them, and someone could be getting a very specific offer that's exactly the right thing for them in that moment. We're a bit of a way off that. We tend to work more on kind of segment level at this point because we're trying to drive those bigger changes in behaviour and that kind of thing. But as Max says, the way we've started doing it now with control groups, incrementality, proving that, really trying to prove, that's the important thing, is saying not only are we running a test, but we're really proving that it's making a difference incrementally, that it's changing behaviour at a fundamental level. And that's the important part of any kind of testing and optimization program.
I think it's so important as well. I think, we've spoke to a lot of people where testing is looked at as a activity that's done and dusted. It's so important to carry it on. I think a website is a living, breathing thing. It needs to be kept alive, and that's where that ongoing optimization comes in and that testing comes in. What was right, what was working even a quarter ago might not be working now. And then again for different markets, and it's never ending, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's always the other thing. I always brings up retailers, like, are you thinking about the external market conditions as well? Like, there's so many things going on in the world right now. We won't go into them because we'll all get a bit depressed. But there's so many things, and those all have an impact. And it's sort of like, as you say, what worked 6 months ago, suddenly a major incident happens that causes inflation to go up, that causes costs of living to go up, all this kind of stuff. The situation for your consumers is changing, and their ability to spend and what they're going to do. So you need to constantly be testing, thinking about these different things that are happening, thinking about, you've got your product range, product releases, Black Friday's coming up, what other occasions, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, all these things are happening all the time. So you've always got to be thinking about, what are we going to do next? How are we going to change things? What tests are we going to run to figure out what works in this moment? So yeah, it's continuous.
I was going to say the other thing we've certainly had some intelligence insight on, GLP-1, and actually people are choosing to spend their free cash on things like Manjaro or any of those kind of things. So there's other things as well, that actually things that are maybe a current thing that isn't, we could have no wars on the planet, and there would still be other things that are new things, that people would start to spend their money on that they didn't spend on 6 months ago.
That's really a whole GLP-1 thing is really interesting. Like, people spending money on other things. A size is going down. Is the average size of a person going to go down because of GLP-1s? Yeah. Their health is certainly going to improve with a lot of people if they start. There's all kinds of things that that will have an impact. So it's interesting to think about.
Definitely.
When I started this podcast, I didn't think we'd be talking about GLP-1. And then it's great that, a lot of this testing works and we see the benefit from it. But are there any tests that you ran that didn't work?
Yeah, there's plenty, to be honest. I think it. It's
yeah, it's really
Yeah,
good. Yeah,
loads.
plenty. Yeah, it happens all the time. Yeah, agreed.
be.
Agreed. Yeah.
It should be, and it is as simple as that. If you're not failing, you're not learning. If everything just works, then you're not trying hard enough, and it is as simple as that. So, we might put it might be around the delay of when an offer goes in, or we might suddenly say, right, we want to expand the intent and make it so that more people see it. Well, that could be great, but it could be really damaging and things like that. So I think you have to trust the data and sort of be open to it. And I think if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough, you're not testing enough.
Yeah, I mentioned the retailer we work with, the gift retailer, and we couldn't get people. That's the thing. I spoke to many years ago. This is not current information, so this isn't relevant to. But I spoke to some people from Harrods, and they were kind of saying like, what we'd really like to do is lots of people buy beauty products on our website, but we'd love them to come in for a beauty experience as well. Come into the branch, and getting people into stores, if you've got physical stores, is often a really good goal, because people generally, when they come into stores, more likely to then buy ancillary purchases, have a better experience. A lot of retailers say to us, could we get more people to do click and collect rather than just delivery, because delivery costs are lower, people come in store, they're more likely to buy something else. But so it had some powers, and it was like, that's a really interesting question. Like, if someone's buying a few beauty products, could you then upsell them a beauty experience? That's going to be a lot more money. It's going to require a lot more physical commitment. You've got to go somewhere. So it's like, yeah, maybe not. You might have to incentivize them very heavily to make that happen. But we can try it, and we can see, and then at least you'll know for sure whether it works or not. Or maybe we rethink and try something else. We've tried like free gifts and things. We had a retailer who said they'd bought a particular colour of lipstick, I think it was, and they couldn't sell any of it. Basically, people weren't buying it. So instead, they just started giving it as a free gift with some other stuff. Drove some extra purchases, There's all sorts of things, like just trying things. That is the best way to figure out whether they're going to have any impact or not. We can do a bit of forecasting, but the only way you really know for sure is to really try these things.
I'm such a sucker for gift with purchase. I think it works great in the beauty industry, and now half of my makeup bag is from gift with purchase, and I spend too much money on it.
No. The ones that people eat, free gift with purchase. The other one people bring up a lot is the competition thing. So rather than getting, say, a discount every time, so you say like every one person a month gets their basket for free or something. People quite like that one as well, and it does work quite well. There's a bit of a trend for it at the moment, but yeah, it's interesting.
And then just out of interest, going off piste here a little bit, but with big retailers like I won't name them, but there's been certain specific discounts that have been leaked, which have in one purchase lost retailers hundreds, because there's a certain set of products you add to the basket and a certain code you use, and then effectively gives it for free. How do things like that actually happen? Is it a mistake, or
it could be a combination, and it might just be a mistake. It might also be planned. And the thing is that it's about your, you have your own governance internally, and I think that bit's the bit that's really important. So, for instance, we're constantly checking what is being used, what discounts are being applied, and whatnot. Because I think if you're not doing that, you're not being responsible as an e-com team anyway. You need to protect your business and make sure that your profitability stands up. Sometimes it's by accident, sometimes it's just someone's accidentally figured it out and it just works and they shared it. It might also be, as we've got a lot of stock, and actually if we were to accidentally get rid of it, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, the intentional leak, isn't it? It does happen quite a lot. Yeah,
exactly. So
I would also say one thing that's quite surprising, and that we've had this with quite a few big retailers when we start working with them, is one of the things we do is we start tracking. We track once we tag a site, and we have an integration with like Shopify and things, so we can start working with the site. We start collecting the data. One of the things we look at is, okay, how many purchases have you got happening with a discount code? What discount code is that? Let's have a look at that. And then we present back a report and say, right, this is all the purchases, here's all the discount codes. And typically, if you're a big retailer and have been around for a while, there are lots of ways codes are going out. So there's not just us. There's probably affiliates going on. There might be content creators who've got their own codes. There might be partners who have their own codes. There's lots and lots of stuff going on from different places. And so we start going, okay, here's all these codes. Where do all these, you tell us where all these codes come from. And retailers are unaware. They didn't know. They'd never seen this data before presented like this. So they're like, wow, I didn't know we were giving away so much money there and so much money there. And so one of the things we're really careful of when we start working with a retailer is, as Max says, it's that governance piece of like, where are the codes going out from? Let's make sure we're not clashing with different retailers. Let's make sure we're not overlapping. If someone's got an affiliate code and a code here and a code here and a code here, we don't want them to be able to use all of those because they'll suddenly get the product incredibly cheaply. But which code should they be getting? Which is the most valuable one? Which is the best one for them to get? All this kind of. So you really need to think carefully about, especially I think if you're a big established retailer, you've been around a long time, you've done a lot of stuff. There's just going to be a lot of this going on. And so one of the things is get on top of it and just make sure you understand what's going on and where those codes are coming from and get more control over it. And then you can manage it a lot more effectively and control your performance a lot more effectively. So that's a really useful part of the process to go through.
Well, you can only manage what you know exists, I guess. So it's understanding what's actually even there in the first place.
DTC Live On Air is powered by Bright Pill by Sage.
What do you think brands are overcomplicating when it comes to CRO?
That's a big question. What do you think, Matt?
What do I think? I think it depends on the brand naturally, but I think there's always a hesitancy to not do it, and I think that's probably the biggest thing. I think what you need to do is possibly pick low risk things. You don't want to necessarily do an A/B test on his checkout or your product page too rapidly, but there might be some pages that have enough traffic that you can get some data from. I think that's probably the biggest blocker, is people are afraid of change. The other thing is, if you're on big legacy platforms or have expensive budgets to make changes, that can also be a tricky situation. But the other thing is that it's not doing it is also a big problem. So I think where internally you might say, of course we should definitely have this feature. A few years ago we introduced a compare function that was very similar to when you buy white goods. So you buy a dishwasher or whatever else, you get a big old stat sheet and you compare 4 or 5 different things. We thought that was a good thing for us. Turned out no one used it. So we spend a lot of money and time and effort and people sort of hours to build this and get the data in, and it actually didn't add a huge amount of value. And I think that's it. I think it's about not necessarily ignoring the ghosts internally that are kind of course we should do that, or we tried that before and it never worked. And it's about giving it a go with the right setup. So if that's with your standard A/B testing tools, if it's with an intelligent offers tool or whatever it might be, I think it's really important that you just have to do it, but you have to stay with it, and you have to be honest, and you have to have a good framework, and you need to kind of make sure that just because the top person at the top of the company has said we should do it, it may not be the right thing to prioritise.
Yeah, I think I'll definitely echo everything Max says. I think the two things, keep it simple. Like, I think the thing is, it can be quite intimidating because if you're looking at your whole funnel process, your website, everything that's going on, it's like, where do we start? Keep it simple, eating an elephant one bite at a time, all that kind of thing. Make it nice and simple for yourselves. I think the thing I always find, I always talk to retailers about is, the job of e-commerce in some ways is quite simple, right? Sell more things to more people more often. And I think I often try to think, like, if you maintain that framework in your head, that those are the only things you really need to do, because it's easy to get distracted by, there's loads of other things going on, and should we there's a lot of like ethical stuff. How in that should we be? Well, that's a decision for you and your brand and what fits for you, and all kinds of other stuff. But at the end of the day, sell more things to more people more often. What is going to help you do that? Figure that out. Test it. If it works, keep doing it more. If it doesn't work, discard it, stop doing it, as Max suggested. Yeah, that didn't work for us, let's get rid of that. That's what it comes down to. So keep it simple, keep it focused on what you're trying to achieve, and that's what will make the difference. I think there's, and I'm gonna pick any particular fellow vendors, software vendors here, but I'm gonna slam, because we'll all come along and we'll all tell you, you should be worried about this and this and this and this and this and this, and don't be distracted by those things. Focus on the things that will actually make a difference. And that's why we could have chosen to implement sort of intent anywhere in the thing, but we've chosen discounts and promotions because they're, as I say, one of the biggest tools, one of the biggest levers the retailers has that really make a difference. So you won't get distracted by doing it for other things which won't really make a difference. So focus on those things that really make a difference, and those that's where you're going to make differences that will really matter, improve your performance, learn something and just keep moving on. And and as Max says, just
That's
keep
it.
going, keep going, keep going.
Yeah, all those tiny gains, isn't it? 1 or 2% conversion lift at each point of the funnel 100 times is a significant shift.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't sound like much. You think, oh, this is just going to improve things by 0.2%, but that every day, every week, every month, every year, across your whole funnel, across all your customers, that is a big difference. So, yeah, just figure it out. Just figure it out, people. Yeah. Get out there and figure it out.
It's simple. I think a lot of teams though are looking at kind of, if you look at it in almost a pyramid shape, where that those three things that you've just summarised are that top goal, and then below it you get more granular. It is overwhelming when you look at the bottom of that pyramid first, and then you kind of lose sight of where the top is, and you get sidetracked along the way. So I think it's so important for people to focus on those key goals and work around it sometimes. And it's easier said than done, isn't it? And then with any decision making, there's always trade-offs. Well, most of the time there's trade-offs. And a big conversation in e-com is always going to be retention versus acquisition. So how did you think about that retention versus acquisition piece while making these changes?
I think it's it kind of varies. I think for us, what we see is, and something we've definitely taken is we've taken the learnings of what we've done on site into our retention stuff. So our CRM journeys are far, they're really different to where we were maybe a couple of years ago before we started working with the RevLifter team. I think what we see is that there's various different bits across it, and to be honest, one thing that we haven't really got to is that has this person shopped with us before? We haven't got to that bit just yet. But I think once the customer is on the site, they're either going to buy or not. So that's the purpose of that bit, is how do we nudge that individual session, that user at that point over the line. But it's really important to say that, if we have filters, so if someone's come in from some sort of email, which is an abandoned basket email, we won't then show them another discount on site because there's no value to them. So it's really important to kind of align those bits, and then we keep specific kind of mechanics to our CRM base. It might be that we're looking for acquisition, we go through a slightly different route and things. But I think those bits on the site were very much, if this person fits into the bucket and has triggered it and the filters and whatever else, at that point, it's a transaction to complete rather than, is it a returning user or a new user?
Yeah, definitely. I have some slightly controversial opinions about retention, I think.
Oh, tell us.
Well, I don't know if we're going to them too deeply. I mean, the thing is to think about what you mean by retention. Like, I think people get a bit lost in the loyalty thing. And the thing is, when you mention the word loyalty, you start bringing in the emotional aspect of it and how invested are consumers in brands, how dedicated to their success are they. And in most cases there are some people who love a brand. I'm sure Radley's got some people who, I've definitely met people who are like, I love Radley stuff, I'd love to have more Radley things, but a lot of people are just buying from you, and it doesn't, and often when we talk about retention, what we mean is repeat purchase. Is someone's bought from us once, we want them to buy a second time and a third time and a fourth time. And what are the reasons someone buys a second or third time? They're usually much the same reasons they bought in the first time. There's something they wanted to buy, it was at a price they could afford, it was something they wanted, and they bought it. There are some other elements that come in. They've got trust with you now because they purchased you before. They like your products. It emphasises the importance of good quality products, because people are only going to buy from you again if they bought a good product from you the first time. But yeah, just keeping, again, that, buying, selling more things to more people more often. Just focus on that. What are the reasons they buy? They're going to be quite similar to reasons they bought in the first time. Just focus on that, and you can't go far wrong in making sure your second, third purchase of all purchases are happening more often, which is what you want.
Yeah, my director says customers are loyal until they're not.
Exactly.
Because you are loyal until you're not. I'm a big fan of a certain German shoe company.
We are both wearing Adidas trainers, everyone.
Adidas, and I will be loyal until something goes wrong, and then I'll probably switch.
I own some Nike trainers as well. So there we go.
But yeah, I think that's it. It's loyalty is, that's a completely different topic, and I think you use loyalty programs in a different way. And at that point, it's about value exchange, fair value exchange. So customer at that point is giving you far more detail to be part of your loyalty club, your VIP program. So therefore, you need to give them something back that's different to a transactional thing. So that could be, money can't buy things, reward points, whatever it might be, more competitions, early access to things, etc. Stuff that adds value to them, and they're sharing their first party data with you. So you need to give them something back to say thank you.
It's transactional, isn't it?
Sometimes I will say, there was one conference I was at where it must have been shortly after the M&S Spark launched their Sparks program, and everyone was saying, all these quite small retailers were saying, we'd love to have a Sparks program. And I just broke it down for them and said, well, what do you think? Like, how much do you think it costs M&S to run the Sparks program? It's going to be really expensive, and they can do that because they're a big brand. They've got a lot of money, but you are a small retailer. Is that really important, or is it just sell more things to more people, right? And then, so how do you do that? Yeah, discounts. A lot of loyalty programs essentially end in a discount at the end of the day. You trigger it by reaching a certain point, but that's what it is. So figure out just how to deliver those discounts as effectively as possible, only to people you want to deliver it to. Classic, RFM type analysis. Who are your best customers? They're the ones who deserve the discounts, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's great to build complex, sophisticated things, but sometimes a simple answer can be better as well.
Comes back to overcomplicating it, doesn't it? It just
does.
Sometimes the answer really is that simple.
Yeah.
And then you guys have obviously been working together for a while, and I think sometimes there can be a bit of a stigma when you're bringing in third parties and working with people, and people like to keep things in-house, and like you said, people don't like change. What made the Radley RevLifter relationship actually work in practice?
I'm just going to sit back and enjoy the answer, Max. Over to you.
They're just really good.
Oh.
It's really simple.
I'm fanning myself.
Yeah, I think this is it. I think what we always say, when you're onboarding a new solution provider, you'd never call them a solution provider, you'd call them a partner. Yeah. And that's the bit that's really important, and it's the partnership. So Lauren, as we've said, she's brilliant, and she is an extension of our team. She'll come and sit with us in the office. We share quite a lot in terms of the trading cadence and stuff like that, and so she really gets her sort of her knowledge, expertise into that detail, and kind of figures out what we could or couldn't do in the alongside or outside of those offers. But it is really important. I think every step with a provider, it's important to have a partnership, a relationship that makes them care about your business. Because at the end of the day, if you find someone who, you pay them regardless and they don't gain anything from it, at some point that does sort of just starts to wither away a bit. And I think people just tend to potentially kind of get a bit lazy or sloppy or not as invested. Whereas I think if the partner has got skin in the game, or they benefit from you doing well, they'll always do a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say, Radley are a great partner for us. They're really, really engaged, and they really work with us really well, and a great relationship with Lauren on a day-to-day basis and on a wider basis as well. It's that the thing about when we start working with a retailer, and what's been great with Radley, as I say, we don't know the answers. We don't know all the answers. We're not coming in saying, hey, everyone, we're going to fix everything. What we're saying is, we believe we have an approach, a methodology, a way of doing things, which we think can really benefit you. We'd love to work together to figure out how to use that to bring success to you. And if we bring success to you, that will bring success to us, because we'll grow together. And so that's absolutely the way we try to approach it, which is to say, we offer a 90-day free trial. Sorry, that was a clang of a plug landing there. But the point of that, when people say, 90 days is just to get people in, it's like, it's really about the fact that, as we say, initially we don't know exactly what we need to do. So that gives us a chance to just gather a load of data first. And say, okay, let's have a look and figure out. And there are retailers we work with, we get to the end of that period and shake hands and go, look, we don't think there's much we can do here. It just isn't gonna work. Let's walk away. But if we think there is, then we can start to deploy those things and just keep optimizing, improving over time. And that's when it becomes, as Max was saying, a really strong relationship, because we're learning and growing and figuring out all these things together. And it will just grow and grow from there.
You hit the nail on the head, extension of the team. Yeah. You want to be working with each other, not for each other. And I think when everyone has that shared goal, everyone wants to succeed. We see it all the time, and we're always like, we can, you could essentially say, here's a checklist of things I want, please go and do it. But you're there as the experts to help optimize that. So being open to change, which, we've said a few times, people don't necessarily like sometimes, to optimise that is so important. Otherwise, you stagnate.
You employ a team because they're good at what they do. And so why should it be any different to the partners that you work with? That you should lean on their expertise, and otherwise you would just have one of you and probably a few AI bots, and the rest would happen. But it is really important to say that you're actively working with people because they know what they're doing, so you kind of should trust them.
Yeah, there's some mutual respect there. I think that's really important. Radley trust us because we know about offers and promotions and the data side of intent and all that kind of stuff. But we obviously respect the fact that we don't know anything about selling, handbags and accessories and that kind of thing to people. We've got to listen to Radley. Radley know their customers better than we do. They know their behaviour better than we do. So that's, if we meet in the middle, that's when we can achieve really, really positive things. So it's also worth saying that I will say having well-established commercial goals to hit and hitting them is obviously a major thing as well. So we're doing that.
If it works, then and you can prove to the people that it's worth spending the money in the first place, then that helps.
Well, that's the thing as well. It's not just like one team you have to impress. It's the people that may not like that part of change, and I guess that's where that free trial really comes into play as well. Yeah,
and in particular, if you're taking something from this up to your CFO, your CEO, they're not going, what do I know about how to do promotions and all this kind of, this is very day to day. This isn't kind of my area. So you need to be able to have that thing to be able to go, look, all you need to know is these are the results we've got from it. Oh, that's awesome, brilliant. That's improving everything. That's making our bottom line better. That's saving us money. That's creating the right impression. And then, you can go from there.
The metrics are always so important, and the numbers speak. And then where do you think brands are still wasting budget without necessarily realising?
Oh, that is, it's everywhere. Everywhere and nowhere.
It's a leaky bucket, isn't it, generally?
I think that's it. It's the governance piece, right? It's just being aware of what's going on. Because it's very easy to not do that. You might have a set and forget campaign in paid search, or it's those sort of things that if you're not careful, it's really easy. You can see like volatility around the cost of acquisition. It varies so much that if you're not if you don't have that governance, you don't have that reporting, and you're not just giving yourself that benchmark each week, each day, or whatever. That's where you start to leak money, and it is as simple as that. I think it's like you said earlier in this, that you've got big brands, and the first thing you do is say, these are all your codes, are you aware of it? And half of them will say, oh, I didn't know about that one, or that one, or that one. So it's just around governance, and I think if you stick with that and you keep it's hard to keep an eye on everything, but again, that's why you have a team, that's why I employ people, is you go in with that mindset that you're constantly reporting, constantly testing, and then that helps to plug up some of those holes in the bucket.
Yeah, exactly. The governance piece, the control piece. I think it's very easy to allow things to get slightly out of control in one particular area, just because you've got a lot of areas to look after, a lot of things to think about, a lot of bits to. But what you'll often find is if something has got out of control, if you get on top of it, start managing it, and this is what we're saying is like manage promotions, manage discounts, manage offers, get on top of that. If you do, you'll see the benefits and you'll start to drive the results you want. If you just let things kind of go, then you're not going to do as well as you could. Just make sure you're aware as much as you possibly can and be on top of it as possible.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't come down to one person either, does it? As long as collectively the whole team know what's going on,
that's it.
It doesn't have to be in the mind of one. And I think that's where some people can feel that overwhelm.
That's it. I think it's really important to share, even if it's just high level, but the view of a P&L with your team, and it's important that they understand the impact that they have within it. So you've got your top line sections, your revenue, your margin, things like that. You also then have to look at the cost per order in terms of fulfillment and packaging and everything like that. It's actually far better for just about every retailer, I'm sure, that if they put an extra item in the box, it's far cheaper for them totally across those units. And then it's also about what comes after that and what you're spending on marketing or discounts, etc. So I think giving people that insight and saying, actually, your behaviours really impact not only this line, but also the line right at the very bottom. And that helps for the business, and profitability. It really puts everyone as an owner and makes a difference.
So what's one belief about conversion or performance that feels outdated now? Could be a personal one, could be a overview.
The obvious one to pick is the old-fashioned way of using promotions. I think one of the interesting challenges, and it comes back to the previous question about control as well, is one problem we often get solved. A lot of the challenges we get asked to solve are often merchandising challenges. So it's often the case that a retailer has thought, right, we're going to bring this product on and we've estimated we'll sell, let's keep the simple example, 1,000 of these. And then when it comes to it, they launch the product and actually they only sell 300. And so that's a classic case of, right, you've got these 700 in stock, they're costing us money, we need to clear them. And so as we're coming up to a chance to do a clearance sale, we do a clearance sale. And so there's something broken in here where we don't really understand what people are going to buy and what they're not. So, just using promotions and discounts as a blunt instrument to kind of just get rid of stuff like that, just figure out those problems, where there are much better ways to figure those things out. So, if demand is less than the supply that you brought in, there are much more intelligent ways we can address that problem on an ongoing basis. I sort of longer term vision, there could be this idea of, it's almost like, there used to be this cliche of saying everything is Uber but for this, but it's like Uber but for retail, where if you understand the demand and you understand supply, you can figure out how to get pricing right so that the two meet and then, you get the right level. So you absolutely could figure that out. Technology is there now, data is there, analysis, machine learning, AI. I just see AI as, we're already doing machine learning where we're analysing data and learning things from it. AI is all about just automating the decision making on top of that to enable more things to happen. We're using all those kind of things. We're just making more of these things possible to do because they require real-time, fast decision making at scale. So, there are definitely things we can start doing now that weren't possible before. We just need to grasp those opportunities to be able to use things like discounts, other tactics you can use as well in a much more interesting and intelligent way that will, help retailers a lot more achieve what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I think the ones for me, it sadly it's the top line vanity ones. The things like, I think the biggest challenge you'll have is, our conversion rate this week is X. Last year it was Y. Why is it different? And it's like, well, there are 1,000,001 reasons that could drive that. And I think it's those bits. I think as long as your trend is going in the right direction, you can demonstrate that. That's the bit that's important. But a year-on-year comparison on a traffic or a conversion stat is just meaningless at the moment.
So much can happen in a year.
We've got this thing at work where people refer to my little stories as danecdotes because I make them so much. So I worked for an airport technology company for a little while, and that was really interesting. I worked there, so they'd built a tool. Essentially, there's a terrifying thing: airlines and airports don't share data. So airports don't actually know how many people are coming on a flight. That data doesn't get shared with them. All they know is a flight's coming in. They don't know how many people. So this airport company, one of the things they've done is used AI to automatically to estimate, predict how many people were going to be on the plane. So the plane is this big and it's generally this full. We can't at this time of year on this flight, so we know it's going to be this many people coming off. But then the pandemic happened and all demand for flights, I think in the US, because they were working particularly in the US, it dropped to like 40% or something. So there was no way that the tool was right anymore because it would be saying, well, there's going to be 150 people coming on this flight. There weren't, there were 30. So all they could do was manually overwrite everything. They just had to manually overwrite all the data. So it's like this clever AI tool you've built is now absolutely redundant. So that just goes to show you, like, things can change and just suddenly change everything. And for retail, obviously the pandemic was really positive. Suddenly people were at home and buying everything. We've seen it sort of performance sort of seems to be trying to revert back to its previous kind of position since then. But yeah, you never know what's coming up. You never know what big things are going to change and suddenly change everything. So yeah, you've got to be ready to roll with the punches.
So do you think as well, like we said about you should be planning well ahead for things like BFCM and things like that, and we've always promoted that, but because everything's changing so quickly, do you think that there's almost a downside to planning ahead sometimes? Absolutely.
You have to plan for half your plans to be wrong.
Yeah.
So contingency is really important. We know full well that with the best will in the world, we could plan everything to the nth degree, but something will change, and there's things that we can and what we can't control. So it's really important to the team that we say, you control the things that you can control, and then the rest kind of happens without, that you can't influence the macroeconomic climate and anything like that. But we have to plan for what your next step is. So what's your build? If that bit doesn't work, what happens here? The agility is, you just have to embrace. And I think as long as you kind of get to a point where you can say, right, well, these are our rules of engagement. These are the things that we know we want to do or don't do. So that might be around what's our stance on the % of discount or the bottom line profitability or whatever it might be. You have your rules of engagement and you plan best will in the world, second, third sort of variances, and that's all you can do, because that it will change.
Yeah. There's a Mike Tyson quote, isn't there, about everyone has a plan until I get punched in the face, and it's absolutely true. I'll say one of our clients, sadly no longer one of our clients, were Denby Pottery. We were working with those guys up until recently, and we were working with the team. As far as they were concerned, everything was good. We were working, things were working. Our work together, our promotions we were doing together were really working. And then news sadly came that they'd gone into administration. So big love and respect for the team there. That's going to be a tough time for them. But an iconic brand, Denby Pottery, really really important brand from the past. So you don't know what's going to come along and what impact it's going to have. All you can do is try to respond to these things as they come in and do the best you can. But
it's definitely scary when you see these household names struggling, and I think it can be daunting for smaller brands as well, because not everyone's safe, and I think it's easy to assume sometimes they are.
Yeah, although we do also work with some very small retailers who seem to be doing really, really well as well, and they're growing. So it's an odd thing sometimes when you see the big established guys who are slightly struggling. It's probably because they got a bit too big and they just find it difficult.
There's an inertia, right? It's quite a massive. Some of these big companies with heritage oil tankers to turn around. They're not jet skis, are they?
Yeah, they can't get lean very quickly. Whereas the startups can just be like, hey, there's only 4 people who work here, and we can just be careful about how we do that. We can automate
agility,
things a lot more.
Isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. They can respond. So
and then looking ahead, what are you both focused on improving or testing next?
Well, for me, it's, as we've said, it's across the full funnel. So there's the microtransactions through the site. The bits that we really need to continue testing with is, we had made a very sensible decision to move to Shopify, which makes things a lot easier. But it's the things like, how do we get more people to engage with the content? How do we increase scroll rates on the kind of visual creative landing pages? How do we improve listing page through to product page? All of those microtransactions, just even before you worry about, are people going to click add to buy, add to bag and convert? So they all make a massive difference. And Dan's sort of 3 pillars are correct. We want to sell more to more people more often, and you just you frame it quite simply, and you kind of quickly adjust it. But testing and learning is really important. I think there's lots of challenges with selling something like a handbag online that it's a purchase that you're going to use very frequently, so you need to be sure it's the right product. So there's a lot of buying hesitancy if you don't know what that bag is going to be like when it arrives with you. So anything we can do around that is probably our big priority.
Yeah, Dan's 3 pillars. I like that. Everyone, that needs to become a thing, everybody.
Another
Hashtag Dan's 3 pillars. And Max, you were saying, you start planning for Black Friday, right? So you must be starting to think about that already as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. It just keeps rolling on. For us, yes, it's constantly, as I say, we analyse over 50 data points right now. We're constantly thinking about other data points we can bring in. We've mainly focused so far, we're a startup, so we're still quite early on our journey. It's mostly been about on-site behavioural signals and on-site interventions, so pop-ups and things, overlays. What we want to do over time is be able to get involved in more of the journey, so integration with CRMs, being able to sort of say, well, look, can we also control what goes into emails, like checkout abandonment emails, that kind of thing. How can we plug into tools earlier on as well? How can we bring other data points in? What other data points are there that we can start pulling in? We've got an integration with Klaviyo. We're looking at their data points and saying, well, how relevant are some of these? Do these really tell you much about intent or not? We're analysing, assessing those. So it's just a constant thing of more data points, how can we make our platform more intelligent, our models more intelligent, so we're getting the right answers for different retailers. Retailers have different AOVs, different purchase decisions. I was at a conference and met a jewellery maker who sells rings that cost £2,000. They have a very low conversion rate, but obviously when they sell one, that's a really great thing. It makes them a lot of money. So we're trying to understand all these different retailers, all these different sectors, to figure out more data points that help us deliver better answers for our retailers, especially Radley, and more put our things in more channels, more different platforms. So it's just a constant thing of just trying to help retailers be even more intelligent in as many places as possible.
Well, thank you both so much for joining me today. I think it's so important, especially with the brands preparing for peak, even though the weather's just warming up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
DTC Live On Air is powered by Bright Pill by Sage.